Thank you. All right, I'd like to call this work session to order on AO 2020-85, Repealing and Reenacting Anchorage Municipal Code Title 23 to adopt codes and local amendments. Let's start with a roll call.
Miss Allard?
Here.
Mr. Constant?
Here.
Mr. Dunbar?
Here.
Ms. Kennedy? Ms. LaFrance?
Here.
Mr. Perez-Verdia? Mr. Peterson?
Present.
Ms. Quinn Davidson?
Here.
Mr. Rivera?
Present.
Mr. Weddleton? Ms. Zolotel?
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So as normal, for folks who want to get in the chat, either put yourself or in the queue, either put yourself in the chat or text me if you can't access the chat. Okay, so for today, we have 3 different parts for this work session. We have a presentation by the administration. Then we have a presentation by the Home Builders Association. Then we're going to discuss some amendments. And then if there's any time left, we'll have any additional discussion. So let's go ahead and start with the presentation by the administration.
Good afternoon, Assembly members. I'm Bob Dole, building official for the municipality of Anchorage. We will be splitting this presentation among 4 people. I will be addressing the audit provision and some overview. Brian Dean will be addressing the sprinkler provision. Pierce Schwab, the sustainability manager for the municipality, will be addressing Evie Ruffin, and Ross Knopfsinger, the manager of engineering services for building safety, will be addressing the energy code. So without further ado, I've shared my screen with you. Hopefully that's working, and I will proceed to the first slide for
While you're doing that really quick, just want to note for the record, we've been joined by Mr. Weddleton and Ms. Kennedy. Thank you. Please continue.
This is Brian Dean with the Anchorage Fire Department, Anchorage Fire Marshal. I just wanted to point out the state requirements that are adopted statewide for the provisions that we're also looking at here in 13 ACC 50 about the application of the International Fire Code, about regulating all occupancies in all buildings, and that those provisions, the provisions that we adopt locally, can't be less than what the state adopts. So as we consider amendments to this, we just want to be cognizant of that requirement from the state. Next slide, please. Just wanted to reiterate, I'm not going to talk about this a whole lot, but just the options that are under our current adopted code, and then the 4th option that we're proposing now under this amendment to allow automatic sprinkler systems as an additional option in lieu of the other 3 previously required options. Next slide, please. And then finally, I just wanted to also reiterate about the efficacy of sprinklers. They actually not only save property and reduce property damage, but they do save lives. And as we consider allowing sprinklers to be in single-family homes, we want to remember that we are actually protecting people's lives as well, and I don't want to lose sight of that. And that's my portion for this morning.
Hi, this is Pierce Schwab, Sustainability Coordinator. Wanted to run through a few reasons why the EV rough-ins are going to be a good idea for Anchorage. It's much easier to do now versus later. The cost to install the rough-ins during new construction is minimal, a few $100s, compared to thousands it would cost the homeowner to retrofit their home, garage, or outdoor space. Should the homeowner decide to utilize the circuit for EV charging, it's pretty easy to do to install the charger, can be completed at minimal expense, and that circuit can also be utilized for things like a shop welder or hot water heater as well. This also prevents creative solutions that are happening now already. There are plenty of instances where homeowners are charging their EVs using extension cords, or even multiple, running from their dryer plug in their laundry room or elsewhere, plugged into a power strip, lots of unsafe situations. Just last week, saw a text from someone in Juneau asking how to keep their roughly 80 feet of extension cord dry while they're charging their EVs with all the rain, and complaining it wasn't actually working. So just something to note there. And then we're also future-proofing Alaska's home stock. The International Code Council cites research indicating the U.S. will need 9.6 million new electric vehicle charging points by 2030. Almost 80% of those will be in single-family homes. Looking at purely linear growth, we're looking at around 7,200 EVs in Anchorage by 2030, or the latest report from Bloomberg says around 25,000 EVs in Alaska by 2030. That's coupled with investments from Ford of $11 billion in electric vehicle models, and as well as GM, $20 billion investment in electric vehicle models. And then finally, the International Code Council, which provides widely adopted best practices and standards for construction. They included EV readiness in their latest guidelines. They expect about half of U.S. states will adopt the guidelines, which include the new EV readiness requirements in 2021.
To address concern, this is Bob Dole again, building official. To address concerns about possibly increasing the service size by doing this, we've added clarifying language that removes the requirement to go larger than the normal traditional 200 amp service. Long and short, as they're coming, we have to deal with it. Incidentally, I've spoken with a couple of contractors who've opined that they can install these in new construction for under $100. So that $200 will include the profit and overhead, which HBA testified at the assembly meeting was 100% of the cost of a sprinkler. So that $200 would include that, and it's a lot easier to do then rather than thousands afterwards. Ross?
This is Ross Knopfsinger, the Engineering Services Manager for the MOA. This is my 7th code adoption process, Title 23 code update with the MOA. I managed the last 6 of them. I guess the issue here is residential energy code compliance for 1 and 2 family constructions. I think the important point to mention is that the way the code is currently written and proposed for adoption, that demonstrating compliance with AHFC requirements is an option for demonstrating compliance with the proposed Anchorage Energy Code. So because it's an option to go through the AHFC process to demonstrate compliance, there are no conflicts between the two. You can choose to go the AHFC route and the MOA would accept that and you're good to go. The way the amendments being proposed in regards to this section, it would mandate going through the AHFC route, which actually takes options away from people. Under Anchorage version of the code, one could demonstrate code compliance by going through the prescriptive path, which AHFC, excuse me, does not allow one to go through the prescriptive path for new construction. But if you were an owner builder building your own house, maybe you would not want to pay to hire an energy rater to go through the AHFC process. You might just want to take the prescriptive route and demonstrate compliance yourself. And the proposed amendment would take that option away from them. And that's all I have for that.
Turning to third-party audit review, just a couple clarifications on the front end looking at the amendment. First, the amendment justification for B refers to the second line speed and streamlining of work that the independent inspections allow. Inspections are still done by MOA employees. I believe independent reviews was there. Plan review is basically a second set of eyes looking at the document to make sure it was done right. So we didn't call ISO. We took what they was filed with the State of Alaska Division of Insurance to look at the savings now that business property owners are getting for covered structures that homeowners are not. And you can see there is a structure there that there is that savings because they have that that rating of a 3. There is a savings there that ungraded residential construction since the last code cycle is not getting. There's one difference between the two, and that is independent audits. So to the extent that the amendment says there's no cost savings, the audit function provides a means to get back on the graded scale for residential construction without us taking over the getting away from the third-party reviews. In fact, most third-party reviewers are responsible and diligent. However, not all are, and we're seeing growing quality problems. And these are real world that we've seen just in the last few weeks. These aren't theoretical. These aren't what we'll find. These are the ones standing out and slapping us in the face now that are problems. The sufficient detail to demonstrate code compliance becomes a problem when the inspector goes out there and cannot approve it as designed. It has to be back. That costs more reviews, that costs more time, that costs more money. A serious situation we're looking at right now, what happens with many reviewers and designers is there's a loss of independence. They become part of a joint team. And I think the second bullet there reflects what happens when that goes too far. A designer is in an assisted living facility, so the third-party reviewer just kept up and kept doing the same work, submitting it as the designers, even though it was his own work. When that third-party reviewer is both reviewing and designing, we no longer have that second set of eyes to make sure it's being done right. And frankly, these are volume plan reviewers we're looking at, that action against them will have a significant impact across the board. It is also why BCEGS, our building code enforcement grading score, is ungraded for third-party plan reviews without a quality assurance function, because without it, you have like this. The third bullet, we find ourselves with a roof that when the inspector gets out there is a hot roof, and there is no way to fix it to make it code compliant other than to go back and make get a redesign, and the builder and or owner paying for the cost of that. And finally, we have a situation where repeatedly there's issues that should have been caught in plan review, they're not. So when we go out there to address it on the reinspection, we find the reviewer is the one out there actually doing the direct work as the design engineer to find the solution. We've lost that second set of eyes that is the whole object of plan review. It is this quality assurance that is driving the request for and the need for an audit function. Without that, we cannot get homeowners the same savings that commercial property owners get. And without it, you can see here that we're not really providing third-party plan review. We're providing something else and kind of just tucking it under as we're going forward there. And finally, on the bottom one, we just had an ongoing issue with an earthquake one that once if something was observed, they can't seem to fix it. We initially came up with this slide set in response to a letter that was forwarded to us from an AHBA member. There's no amendment pending on removing the subfloor protection, so I don't think we have to go into this actual picture from a fatality where a volunteer fire department chief lost their life because the floor was not protected. The long and short of it is the IRC committee has a lot of experience building homes. They don't have as much running into burning buildings or doing forensic fire analysis afterwards. Looking at Title 23 as drafted, we believe it reflects the best way going forward. FEMA, based on several studies, is saying code compliance with the standards gets us an $11 return on investment for every dollar coming up to those higher standards, and the municipal team is standing by for your questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Before I go in the queue for questions, just two quick things. So for members of the public or other folks on the phone, You can find this presentation and the other presentations during this work session at the work session page at muni.org/assembly. And then also just as a reminder for the public and the body, so this item is, when I initially scheduled this work session, I made the incorrect assumption that we would be coming to this item on October 13th, but the body made the decision to postpone to October 27th. So just as a reminder, this is going to be back before us on the 27th. With that, we'll go ahead and go through questions. Mr. Gates.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had a quick question. Mr. Doyle had mentioned a few changes, such as to the EV rough-in requirement. Does this mean there's an S version coming from the administration, or is that proposed as an amendment, floor amendment? I just wanted to know if an S version is coming.
I would defer to Chris Schutte, who's online, on how we will present that. We designed this to address the concerns expressed to us from Assemblymember Weddleton. Based on the feedback we get from today, though, we're prepared to offer it as an S version.
Through the chair, this is Chris Schutte. Just to reaffirm what Bob said, at this point, there's not an S version drafted, but rather than sit through 10, 20 floor amendments, it likely will be in the best interest of the body to have an S version that incorporates agreed to changes going into the 27th. So depending on how we get through today, I suspect we'll know an answer to that question here very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Zolotel?
Thank you. I had a question for Mr. Dean. He went through his slides really, really fast, and there was one he put up that had, it appeared to be almost like several options for when you don't need there to be a sprinkler. I guess it went by so quickly. Could you explain that? Is that a menu of options, or is that, yeah, I need a little explanation. I was trying to catch it as it went by.
Thank you. Through the chair, Assemblymember Zolotel. I went through that fast because we had discussed this before. I didn't want to take up too much time, but the slide indicated 4 different options for addressing firefighting water supply in areas that are outside of 600 feet from an existing hydrant. And one is to extend the public water utility, basically add hydrants to your development or within 600 feet of your residential development. The other one is providing an alternative system in compliance with NFPA 1142, which could be a private hydrant system. It could be a reservoir or a drafting site. Number 3 is constructing homes with defensible space and fire resistant construction techniques in accordance with the International Wildland Urban Interface Code. And then, of course, number 4 is the new proposed one for residential sprinklers.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Is it possible to get a little bit, and I can be via email, about what exactly it looks like for number 3? I need a little bit more information there, and that would be really helpful to have as I consider these 4 options. Thank you.
We can certainly do that.
Thank you. So I have 2 more folks in the queue before we go on to the AHBA presentation. So first, we're going to start with Mr. Michelson.
Oh, yes, Mr. Chairman. This is Paul Michelson, builder in Anchorage for 45 plus years. Pertaining to I have several comments as we go on here, but the EV stations, which I thought we were on currently now, ICC, the gentleman that gave the report, ICC did include them in the 2021 code provision booklet, but there's been appeals made by NAHB because they were not an energy issue. They should have been in the electrical code. So it seems like the municipality of Anchorage is trying to get a code adoption to a code that has not been passed nationally yet. And I guess my question, Mr. Chairman, is why? And the cost of $100 per installation, I believe, is false. I've gotten 3 quotes from different contractors, and it's ranging from somewhere in the neighborhood from $350 to $600 for the installation of a 40 amp circuit on the outside of a garage wall.
Thank you. Who from the administration would like to address those questions?
Through the chair, this is Bob Dole. We're looking at we are consistent with the ICC guidelines going forward, and it may be under appeal, but is the direction going. I too have gotten bids, Paul, and the latest one I got was from M&M Electric for under $100 to put it in. So it's a rough-in, not a full intact circuit hooked all the way through. It provides the basis for the conduit, the base plate, but is not actually requiring you to encumber that circuit at this point. At the time of installation is when you would go back and determine what else is necessary. But the actual getting power from the box to the garage wall is what we're looking at right now. We see it as no different than the discussion. You may have been around, I wasn't, when we required putting block heater plugs in. It's the exact same thing for safety reasons. It's cheaper to do it on the front end and avoids innovative solutions that kill people and cause fires.
Thank you. Mr. Whittleton?
Oh, thanks. So I want to get back to the sprinklers for a moment because, you know, they're referred to as this being a new option, which is a good thing. We have more options. But my understanding is that this section, this 507.1 with required water supply, has not previously applied to single and 2-family homes. So, you know, if we are to apply that, then these are valuable options. But if we stick with what I understand is where we are now, and this is not applied to single 2-family homes, then, well, you know, it's not really fair to say it's an option. You know, can someone address that?
Certainly, through the chair, Assemblymember Weddleton. This is Brian Dean. The currently adopted code requires developments to provide the firefighting water supply. That is a code requirement. There's been some difficulty in applying it and not complete consistency in applying it either. We want to rectify that. The code provision is there. We understand the difficulty in extending hydrants, although there are other options beside that. But having the sprinkler system as an additional option to those is, in some instances, more cost effective than extending hydrants and depending on where you're at. So that's why you have this additional option. The fact is that the requirement is in municipal code and it's in state code that we provide firefighting water supply as part of our development process and our building process. So we want to make sure that's addressed, and that's what you are going to be addressing or understanding now that going forward from here, we're going to have to take that into account with every development we look at.
And this is Bob Dole. To build on what Brian said and to look at the second slide of the briefing, the Crawford amendment would need approval by the state fire marshal to be viable because it sets a lower standard than that in state code, which adopted the IFC for all occupancies and did not create an exception for single family and duplexes in 507.1.
I guess if I can follow up briefly, so to summarize it, in fact, this does apply and has been applying, but we just haven't enforced it. And now we intend to start enforcing it. Is that correct?
Through the chair, this is Bob Dole. I believe for the difficulties of enforcing this, the paradigm change it was with the last code adoption when it came into play, and frankly, just some of the difficulties organizationally we've previously spoken about, it has not been enforced, even though it's been on the books.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Allard, then I'd like to see if we can move on to the AHBA presentation. So go ahead, Ms. Allard.
Thank you. Mr. Dole had made a comment and he said that it caused a bunch of people to be killed, which is a very intense statement. So my question would be, how many people were killed, and specifically to the MOA?
In terms of the block heaters, I would have to go back and do research. However, but looking back at the notes at the times, the number of people who were electrocuted or burned in fires from improper block heater plugins was a recurring theme. I'd have to go back and do some research to the fire department, and I'll get back to you.
Okay, because I specifically heard you say killed, so I actually want those numbers too, please.
I'll see what I can derive. I've heard it mostly by seeing accounts, just in doing some, I'll see what I can get for a body count for you, Assembly Member.
Yeah, and also, like you said, anything related to any injuries due to that, it'd be appreciated. Thank you, Mr. Dole.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, we're going to go ahead and turn it over to the AHBA presentation. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Assembly. We pull up the, I am see if this works. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes, we can see the presentation.
Wonderful. Thank you for allowing me to speak on this very important topic. My name is Daniel Book. I'm a Senior Program Manager at the National Association of Home Builders, and NAHB is a federation of more than 700 state and local associations and represents more than 140,000 members. I have been involved in code development for 10 years, and before that I was working as a building inspector. I'm a certified building official with the International Code Council and have a degree in architecture. I've served on various code making committees, including the National Fire Protection Association standards, 13D and 13R on residential sprinklers, as well as the International Code Council Fire Code Action Committee. The National Association of Home Builders is a firm believer in safe, affordable homes. Our members have a vested interest in the safety of their products both during the building process and after the house becomes someone's home. For that reason, home builders are active participants in the codes and standards development process, helping to make sure that each advance in building science and technology is weighed for the appropriate balance of safety, complexity, and cost to ensure that each code cycle results in advances that improve homes without pricing them out. It's probably not a surprise that sprinkler mandates are not popular. Since 2009, the International Residential Code has included sprinklers for new 1 and 2 family dwellings and townhouses. Since then, almost all states have removed the requirement from their residential building codes as they have adopted newer additions. 46 states have completely removed the sprinkler requirements for 1 and 2 family homes. They are shown here in light and dark blue. Only California and Maryland have left the sprinkler mandate in place, and 2 additional states have limited the requirement based on the size or height of the home, which still removes the mandate for most homes built in those states. Here's what the national data shows. The blue line shows the number of civilian fatalities each year. The red bars give the total number of 1 and 2 family homes in the US. As you can see, civilian fire deaths have decreased by about 50%, while at the same time the housing stock increased by 1/3. Note that the increase would be newer homes. It's important to note that the major reductions in deaths occurred without sprinklers. In a couple slides, I'll show you how this can be attributed to newer homes being safer and the effectiveness of smoke alarms. The following data is taken from the U.S. Fire Administration website, which compiles information on home fire fatalities through a daily internet search of U.S. news media. 15 of these fires were reported from 2014 through September of this year in mobile homes and in 1 and 2 family homes in the jurisdictions of Anchorage, South Anchorage, East Anchorage, and the Mat-Su Borough. 7 of the incidents were mobile homes, but look at the age of the site-built homes. These homes were constructed anywhere from 35 to 56 years ago. The average age of a home in Alaska is 33 years, and all incidents for site-built homes in the Anchorage area, as noted, were in structures older than the average. Interestingly, Alaska has fairly new housing stock compared to the lower 48, and yet the incidents clearly show that the fire danger is concentrated in older homes. In states where the age of homes has been matched with national fire data, fatalities are heavily concentrated in older homes. This can be linked to recent improvements in the building code. According to NFPA's U.S. Home Structure Fires Fact Sheet, the leading causes of unintentional home structure fires include heating equipment and the electrical system. Newer homes are much less likely to experience heating equipment fires due to new homes having new appliances with safety features, clearances, vents, and chimneys in accordance to current code. The reliability, lower cost of use, along with the balanced airflow providing adequate comfort, also means that space heaters are not necessary in new homes. In light of these reasons, the heating equipment fires that account for more than twice the number of electrical fires can primarily be associated with older homes. As far as electrical fires are concerned, FEMA's report on 1 and 2 family residential building fires states a strong relationship between housing age and the rate of electrical fires has been observed, with housing over 40 years old having the strongest association with electrical distribution fires. Fire blocking is just one of the passive fire safety features that newer homes have. Without them, older homes are more likely to experience rapid fire spread inside the cavities of the structure. And regarding smoke alarms, they have made improvements as well. According to an NFPA report, the fatality rate was more than twice as high in homes that did not have any working smoke alarms as it was in homes with working smoke alarms. The fatality rate was more than twice as high in fires with smoke alarms powered by batteries as it was in fires with hardwired smoke alarms. So older homes are less likely to have smoke alarms in the bedrooms. They are more likely to have battery-operated smoke alarms, which are not interconnected. Nationally, 3 out of 5 homes have battery-operated smoke alarms. New homes have hardwired, interconnected smoke alarms, which have a proven track record of saving lives. And the technology is improving. The standard for smoke alarms, UL 217, has been drastically changed, and with the new standard, there will be fewer nuisance alarms. So fewer people will feel the need to disable the alarms, thus improving the overall effectiveness of smoke alarms. So expect that the data that I've mentioned will actually improve for hardwired interconnected smoke alarms based on this newer standard. Another technological advancement is a 10-year battery, and that's especially important for battery-operated smoke alarms where people get annoyed with the chirp and remove the battery. These smoke alarms, you cannot remove the batteries, and that's an improvement for older homes as well. Some people may think that sprinklers have a perfect track record. The following data is taken from the National Fire Protection Association report, U.S. Experience with Sprinklers. During the 2010 to 2014 timeframe, some type of fire sprinkler was present in an average 24,440 reported home structure fires per year. These fires ended up causing an average of 35 civilian deaths, 616 civilian injuries, and $198 million in direct property damage, and that is per year. Properties under construction were not included in these calculations. Here's another way to look at sprinkler effectiveness. The report states that sprinklers operated in 94% of home fires in which sprinklers were present and the fire was considered large enough to activate them. Beyond the question of their effectiveness, sprinklers also bring with them the issue of unwanted activations. In 1 year, fire departments responded nationally to an estimated 12,400 non-fire activations of home fire sprinklers caused by system failure, malfunction, or other unintentional sprinkler activations. Personally, I've heard of a sprinkler pipe freezing in a home in Maryland, which caused water damage to one corner of the house. If it can happen in Maryland, Anchorage is bound to have its fair share of frozen sprinkler pipes. Higher regulatory costs have real consequences for working American families. These regulations end up pushing the price of housing beyond the means of many teachers, police officers, firefighters, and other middle-class workers. In Alaska, over 118,000 families cannot afford to buy a home costing more than the median price. Hundreds of households in the state would no longer qualify for a mortgage based on just a $1,000 increase to a median priced home. Sprinklers cost many times that amount. As a quick note, the cost shown on this slide is based on the areas which have much lower cost structures than Anchorage. Many local jurisdictions, when looking into the price of sprinklers, find the costs higher than the average of $6,000 and sometimes many times that. The outcome is people are priced out. Families who cannot qualify to purchase homes due to the increased cost from well-meant but expensive and ultimately unnecessary safety features will remain in housing that is less safe because it's built to less stringent code requirements. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm going to go ahead and go in the queue for folks who have questions, starting with Ms. Allard.
Hi, thank you. Can you tell me the effects with earthquakes? Because we seem to have them. We just had one last night, and I'm concerned with sprinklers and earthquakes.
I do not have that data, and frankly, I'm not sure. I'd have to check with the National Fire Protection Association, who tracks the data for sprinklers. I haven't run across that, and I'm not aware of any reports that they have, but that is a good question.
Okay, let me rephrase it this way. Okay, so I guess you answered it. You have it. My question is, I'm going to come to you as differently.
Mm-hmm.
Could sprinklers, because we have earthquakes so often, impact whether they're working correctly, and could they inadvertently go off and damage a home?
Fire sprinkler system is very similar to a plumbing system. The main difference is you are putting it up in the ceiling above the top floor. So I think frost is maybe the larger concern. I'd have to, since I'm not in your area, and not in an earthquake zone either, I'd have to ask you, are you having problems with plumbing piping, rigid plumbing after an earthquake?
Chair, can I follow up with one of the home builders in the meeting right now, Mr. Michelson,
Sure.
maybe?
Sure, go ahead.
Paul, can you answer that for me?
I'll try to, Ms. Allard, through the chair. I think what you're asking, if you have an earthquake and you have a shake, could it cause a premature set-off of the sprinkler system? And I think Dan tried to answer that Ms. Salad. It could happen. It's a live source of water unless you do a dry system. So my simple answer to that would be yes, it could be. And then you would have, in my opinion, from someone who has done quite a few earthquake repairs since the last one happened, you would have water damage, which would far exceed any of the earthquake damage that happened to the house during the event, if that helps.
Yep, it does. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whittleton?
Oh, thanks. So, you mentioned some statistics, 24,400 fires with 35 deaths. How many sprinkler systems are installed in the country? If you said that, I missed that. The residential sprinklers.
I don't have that information. I apologize. What type of information are you trying to understand?
Well, 24,000 fires with 35 deaths sounds pretty bad, but if there's 500,000 sprinklers installed, that starts to become a smaller percent. So just to give it an order of magnitude.
Oh, I see. Well, I mean, they have been installed in places like California and Scottsdale, Arizona. And they are some of the earlier adopters, and those are some larger jurisdictions.
Okay, so I guess lots.
Yes, there are many.
Thanks. Mr. Dole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the chair, David, thank you for dialing in and joining us whatever time zone you're in. I'm sure it's later there. Does NHBA have evidence that, well, let me start at the beginning. This is a provision for fire, water, and an alternate means to meet it. It is not a provision mandating sprinklers. Does NHBA have evidence that homes and occupants fare just as well when there is inadequate fire water, either hydrant within 600 feet or other means to suppress the fire?
I do not have that data in front of me. I apologize. And if you would like to send that question to me, I can follow up with you.
So I guess the question would be for NHBA through the chair is, what role does having adequate fire water as prescribed by IFC 507.1 play in reducing damages both to property and people from a fire? Or do the fires put themselves out even when there's not water to do it? Thank you.
Well, I think what I was attempting to point out in the presentation is that you need a point of ignition, and many times those are more likely to be around in older housing stock, such as a portable heater or older wiring, which is not built to the same standard as current construction.
Thank you. I have a few more folks in the queue who might be able to address some of this. So I have Quista. I'm not sure if that's your name, but go ahead.
Hi, just really quick. So going back to the earthquake question, and actually this is something that I looked at a while ago, and there was a study done after the Napa, California quake, and the Federal Emergency Management Agency studied 32 buildings with fire sprinkler systems and found 5 of the 32 that has sustained substantial sprinkler system damage during the quake. This is just, I can send this information to whoever I need to send it to, but the earthquake issue is a significant issue with sprinkler systems, even if they're installed correctly. As far as the studies go, there's some additional information that FEMA has provided on this topic too. So I don't know if I need to send that to somebody, but the information is here, it's done, and it is definitely a concern in the state of Alaska.
Thank you. So if you could send those that information directly to the assembly or to the clerk's office, and the clerk's office will get it to us, whichever, that'd be great. Could you also introduce yourself, please, for the record?
Sorry, I'm Questa Locke.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Next, I have Mr. Weddleton.
Thanks. And this is, I guess, back to Mr. Dole or others. So I mean, you had said earlier that the 507.1 or something similar applied statewide, and if we were to exempt, residential, 1 or 2 family residential, that we would have to get approved for that. But which is, as I think about it, it's puzzling. I mean, we're in a state where some villages or cities still use honey buckets. I mean, that just, we can't really be requiring sprinklers. I mean, how is the state applying this? Thanks.
Through the chair, this is Bob Dole. I'm just telling you what, the state regulations are out there, that we're a deferred jurisdiction, but we need to meet their standards. On the books, they have applied the IFC to all occupancies. How their individual inspectors or plan reviewers are looking at it, I can't tell you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. So I have 3 more folks in the queue, and then I'd like to see if we can save the last 10 minutes or so to talk through some of the amendments that we have. So Mr. Visser.
Yeah, hi, through the chair, this is Eric Visser. Just a brief comment and a few questions that we brought up to the administration regarding this fire sprinkler discussion. The studies that we've showed with fire data that we have and fire data fatalities is that the majority of the deaths happen in mobile homes. The question we had is how many actually fire fatalities have they experienced from homes that have been more than 600 feet away from a fire hydrant? I don't think that's been part of the discussion. They just said, well, we're adding another option, but we actually haven't seen if this option that they're adding and the new enforcement of this option is actually going to have a measurable improvement. We're trying to just be clear. We want common sense to prevail here. We think it's much safer for individuals to move into a newer home, and the more new homes we can build, the more people can move into those newer homes. So I think raising the costs of new homes substantially through this requirement does a disservice to the community. But I would be interested to hear if you guys have any of those numbers from fire death fatalities from homes that were located more than 600 feet away from fire hydrants and didn't have sprinklers and weren't constructed to WUI standards.
Who from the administration wants to address that?
Through the chair, this is Brian Dean, Fire Marshal. We don't have data on that specifically. It would take some good data mining to provide that. We do have data on is that we have fatalities that happen in homes, and we also have numerous applications of sprinklers in Anchorage that work very well, and instances where people have been able to get out because of the sprinkler system going off. So the specific question on how many deaths are attributable to this, I don't have that specific information. I am curious about how many deaths is enough.
Through the chair, I want to be clear that we're trying to have a conversation about raising the cost of homes substantially, and it does a disservice to the community by not providing that information. You guys are the one proposing this amendment, and I feel like it's your responsibility to provide that information. We've had this discussion for months now, and it still hasn't come out. So I just want to make that clear.
Thank you. Mr. Kaysen.
Thank you much. I just wanted to follow up a little bit on Bob's question about areas that don't have access to, municipal water or not close to services and things like that. Minnesota does have the exemption in place for 1 and 2 family homes, so we can't really do an apples to apples comparison there, but they have R3 facilities that are, boarding houses and stuff like that are required to have sprinklers, but they waive that requirement for areas that are sort of more outside of municipal water supply areas. Basically, they only require sprinklers in those areas in areas that are specifically on municipal water supplies. So you don't have to put in a well and everything like that that we would have to do for more or less everything this applied to. And so we can dig into some of the numbers there, but it certainly seems like just about every other jurisdiction that has taken up this type of question has come down, with the exception of obviously California and Maryland. That these types of sprinklers that we're looking at specifically mandating here are some of the most frequently exempted and not required in other jurisdictions, despite the fact that in those jurisdictions the costs would be a lot less. I also wanted to very briefly follow up on the ISO and the insurance rate. Bob mentioned that they hadn't called ISO. I called ISO both in California and then ended up speaking to someone in Florida for a pretty extended period. Their view is that they don't have anything against third-party plan review, that they do want their plan reviewers to not be overloaded. They don't want the same plan reviewer having approved hundreds of plans and stuff like that. But ultimately, he didn't seem to think that the audit function that was proposed in Anchorage, insofar as he was able to digest it, would make as significant a difference. And then lastly, that the ISO doesn't directly set any insurance rates. They just set a set of recommendations that a variety of insurance companies plug into their own proprietary formulas that sets rates.
Thank you. So I have two folks left in the queue, and then I want to spend the remainder of our time going through the amendments. So, Mr. Constant, go ahead.
Can I let Bob go first, because mine is a slight tangent?
Sure, Mr. Dole, go ahead.
Through the chair, just a quick follow-up. We looked at what ISO actually filed in terms of the reductions. We also looked at the actual scores for the municipality of Anchorage, not a hypothetical. There's one difference between residential and commercial. That's third-party exempt plan reviews. That's the difference between a level 3 and unrated. Hypotheticals are nice, but we have hard copy of what they do in Alaska. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Constant.
Yeah, thanks. So on a bit of a tangent, but this conversation about the earthquakes and sprinklers raised an issue for me that I wanted to let people know that I am still working on. I don't know how many sprinkler systems we had break inside of homes in the 2018 earthquake, but I know we had a lot of homes break in the 2018 earthquake, and a lot of homes in one particular area of this municipality. And that has a lot to do with the building safety service area. And for my part, I want folks to know that I am still working on a plan to address a way to unify the municipality's building codes across the whole muni, because I believe that evidence, the preponderance of it, strongly demonstrates that our system, as it's been developed, allowed people to lose their homes in Eagle River because of the failure of our system to be equitable across all areas. So I just want folks to know that that is a topic that I am still working on, and I'm not certain when it will rise up to the table, but it is for your knowledge.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and move us on to the amendments. So Mr. Gates, if you can go ahead and put up the amendments, please.
Oh, hold on a second there. I wasn't expecting to do this, but we'll just take a second. I do have a question for the administration while I'm pulling up the amendments. There's an effective date that's immediate, and I assume that, that probably wants to change to something that's more delayed, like January 1 or something like that. So I'm not sure if anybody's talked about that before.
Through the chair, this is the building official, Bob Dole. We can do either. Immediate is fine. We have, in the past, we kind of have precedent for how we work with work that's already over 50% done. We would accept it under the current standard. Or we can make it January 1st. But frankly, Ross has been around for 7 code cycles and is used to having to work with work that's being done during the transition.
If I could follow up.
Go ahead.
So it would only apply to new building permit applications, not applications that were already filed but before an effective date but weren't processed yet. Is that correct?
That's correct. And even for work that wasn't filed yet, but that was over usually 50% done, we would use the current code, not the new code.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think I've got the amendments on the screen now. I think that Mr. Weddleton is the better person to speak about them.
Go ahead, Mr. Weddleton.
Okay. So the first is, make sure I got the right document here. Is an amendment 2, and amendment 1 is something that fairly minor that the administration agreed to. So amendment 2, and the intent here is to, to remove the new requirements for the International Energy Conservation Code. And the intent here was to say, well, if you've done Alaska Housing Finance Corporation, you've done enough. And my understanding from the home builders was a key concern was the, where there would be a conflict between, our code and the Alaska Housing Finance Corporation code, which apparently is most houses do go by because they can't get funded if they aren't. And I guess we heard Mr. Dole speak on this and said that what this does is reinforces that, and that's not the intent. So this would probably need some reworking to maintain that flexibility. And
before you go on to the next amendment, Mr. Weddleton, just want a quick note. So the intent here is just to do a quick overview of the amendments that we've received. We have this before us, like I've stated, on October 27th. So we're not going to be able to do discussion on the amendments today, but just wanted to do a quick overview. So please continue, Mr. Weddleton. Thanks.
Okay. So number 3, the intent is to remove the sprinkler requirement from 1 and 2 family homes, which essentially puts it where it is now. So it just changes one of the exemptions to just only deal with those. Number 4 is deals with the audit of the independent inspections, and does 2 things actually. I have a part A, and that this just makes using the electronic plan review optional. It's kind of our job to make that appealing to people and not force them to use it, I think. And the other one would be just deletes that the building official can audit the reviews. And the intent there is just leave it where it essentially is right now. The 5th amendment, it would remove the electric vehicle charging rough-in.
Okay, thank you for the review of those amendments. The members received these amendments via email, and for the public, these amendments are also posted on the work sessions page on the Assembly website if you want to look at those as well. Okay, so with that,
Chair, can I come in briefly?
Yeah, if you have a brief comment, go ahead.
Sorry, these should be considered drafts too. I sent them to Dean, and he's had just a little time to go through them, but I want to have them in front of us for this meeting so people would know what kind of things would be coming.
Understood. Thank you. Okay, so with that, we'll go ahead, go to Ms. Allard, and then I think we'll close the work session.
Ms. Allard? It's okay. It's all right. I was just going to bring up in regards to FEMA. Actually, Eagle River was the epicenter of the 2018 earthquake, but I'll have all those documents and everything ready since I actually work down there at Department of Military Veterans Affairs, and I'll get that to all the Assembly members.
Thank you. All right, so with that, we'll go ahead and close the work session. Just a reminder, this is back before us on October 27th. Looking forward to deliberation and hopefully a vote at that meeting. Thank you.